Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are cracking open a 200-year-old masterpiece, a truly foundational piece of work, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. Now, if you're sitting there thinking an 18th century textbook has absolutely no bearing on your modern life, well, think again. We're going to decode the fundamental rules of economics together, and I promise you, by the end of this, you are going to see the world completely differently.
So, let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. Why read a centuries-old text in today's hyper-fast digital age? I mean, we've got cryptocurrency, AI, global e-commerce. Does a book from the 1700s actually still matter? And the answer is a massive, resounding yes. Because look, while the technology has definitely changed, human behavior hasn't. The bottom line logic for our modern salaries, industry profits, and everyday prices, it hasn't changed one bit. Adam Smith literally laid down the foundational codes for why some people get paid more, why some industries boom while others gust, and whether government should really be controlling prices.
And you know, these huge economic ideas, they're actually hiding right in plain sight. Just think about your typical morning routine for a second. You grab a quick cup of soy milk and a steaming hot baozi. Super simple, right? But actually, from the farmer planting soybeans and milling the flour, to the shop owner steaming the dough, all the way down to you scanning your phone to pay, that single everyday transaction is packed with incredibly complex economics. Hidden right inside your breakfast is the amazing power of the division of labor, the mechanics of currency circulation, and the invisible rules of price formation.
Okay, let's dive into our mental map for today. We'll be looking at 1. The definition of real wealth. 2. The division of labor. 3. Money and price mechanics. 4. The invisible hand. And 5. Modern wealth applications.
Starting with Section 1, Definition of Real Wealth, looking beyond just the gold.
So back when Smith actually wrote this book, the popular theory of the day was called mercantilism. People honestly believed that a nation's wealth was simply how much gold and silver it could hoard. Think of Spain back in the day, hoarding just vast amounts of silver from the Americas, thinking they were going to be rich forever. But Adam Smith looked at this and said, wait a minute, can you eat silver? Can you wear gold to stay warm in the winter? He argued that true wealth isn't just a pile of shiny metal. Real wealth is the total volume of goods and services produced by labor that actually meet human needs. Let's put it this way. If country A has a room full of gold, but their people are literally starving, and country B has absolutely no gold, but they have fertile farms, warm clothes, and sturdy houses, country B is vastly wealthier.
The really crucial point here is understanding the difference between nominal wealth and real wealth. Nominal wealth is just a number of dollars or whatever currency sitting in your pocket. Real wealth is what that money can actually buy, your purchasing power. If a country decides to just print a ton of currency without actually scaling up production, they aren't generating wealth at all. They are just diluting everyone's purchasing power. This perfectly explains why today we rely on GDP, gross domestic product, to measure a country's economic strength. GDP is exactly what Smith was talking about, tracking the total amount of goods and services a nation actually produces.
Which brings us to Section 2, the division of labor, the absolute engine of growth.
Now that we know real wealth is the actual volume of goods, the big question is, how do we drastically scale up production? Well, this brings us to Smith's legendary pin factory observation. He noticed that if an untrained worker tried to make a metal pin entirely by themselves, pulling the wire, straightening it, cutting it, sharpening it, they'd be lucky to make 20 pins in a whole day. But by dividing that work into 18 highly specific steps, with each worker doing just one tiny task, the daily output per worker completely skyrocketed to 4,800 pins. No joke, that is a 240 times increase in efficiency. It acts like an absolute supercharger for economic growth.
So, why does this work so incredibly well? Smith broke it down into 3 underlying reasons. First, increased dexterity. Think of a specialized dough maker in a bakery. If they only knead dough all day long, their muscle memory gets so dialed in, they become incredibly fast and precise. Second, zero time wasted switching tasks. If you're farming and then you stop to weave cloth and then stop to forge tools, you lose immense time just switching your gear and your locations. Specialization fixes that entirely. And third, and this is a really big one, it sparks technological invention. When a worker focuses on just one tiny, repetitive task all day, they naturally start thinking, hey, how can I build a tool to do this faster for me? Specialization literally breeds innovation.
All right, Section 3, Money and Price Mechanics, how we trade the wealth. If everyone is hyper-specialized, producing just one specific thing, how on earth do we acquire the other things we actually need? Well, without money, we'd have to barter. And bartering runs into a massive roadblock called the double coincidence of wants. Imagine you're a farmer with some extra wheat, and you need a winter coat. You can't just find any tailor, you have to miraculously find a tailor who happens to have a coat in your exact size and happens to desperately want your wheat. The odds of that are terrible. You might have to trade wheat to a blacksmith for a shovel, just to trade the shovel to the tailor for a coat. It is an exhausting logistical nightmare. And that is exactly why humanity invented money, a universal, agreed-upon medium. Money is just the grease in the wheels of the division of labor. It isn't the wealth itself, it's simply the bridge that lets you exchange your specialized labor for someone else's.
So, once we have money, how is cost actually decided? Smith mapped out that the price of absolutely every commodity out there is a combination of just three things: wages, profit, and rent. Let's look at our street-side Bowsy again. The price you pay covers the wages of the person kneading the dough and running the register. It covers the profit for the business owner who bought the ingredients and took on the risk. And it covers the rent paid to the landlord for that prime corner real estate. Everything you buy, literally from a bottle of water to a winter coat, breaks down into these three slices of the pie.
But why do prices fluctuate so much? Like, why does a watermelon cost way more in the winter than in the summer? Smith gave us two great terms for this: natural price and market price. The natural price is the absolute baseline cost of those wages, profits, and rents. If a business sells below this line, they go bankrupt. But the market price, what you actually pay at the register, swings like a pendulum around that baseline based purely on supply and demand. In winter, watermelons are scarce, right? Supply is low, but the demand still exists, so the market price swings way up above the natural price. But once summer hits and supply completely floods the market, that price swings right back down.
Moving on to Section 4, Capital and the Invisible Hand. Who exactly controls this huge economic machine?
Let's shift up to the macro level here. First, Smith looked at where capital, which is the money used to create more wealth, should ideally flow. He created a hierarchy of capital productivity. At the very top is agriculture, because it creates the foundational raw materials and food that literally keep society alive. Next is manufacturing, which adds value by turning things like raw cotton into expensive clothes. Then comes wholesale, which moves those goods from where they're abundant to where they're scarce. And finally, retail, which simply breaks bulk items down into single units for consumers. While all of these are totally necessary, Smith argued that a nation has to secure its agriculture and manufacturing base first, rather than just relying on buying and selling other countries' goods. Production absolutely must precede distribution.
Now here is where Smith's most famous concept comes into play. In a system with all these moving parts, you might think you need a king or a government strictly dictating what gets made. But Smith introduced the invisible hand. He realized that if a baker wants to make more money out of pure self-interest, they will naturally try to bake better, cheaper bread to beat out their competitors. Without even trying to be a charity, this baker's own self-interest results in the whole society getting better, more affordable food. The invisible forces of supply, demand, and self-interest automatically balance the market. It's a really brilliant concept. Because of this self-regulating market, Smith argued for a laissez-faire approach, meaning the government should largely just stay out of the way. He outlined just three legitimate roles for the state. 1. National defense, to protect society from invasion. 2. Justice and fairness, establishing courts and police so people can't cheat or steal from each other. And 3. Public infrastructure, things like roads, bridges, and schools that are hugely beneficial to society but might not be profitable enough for a single private business to build on its own. In this view, the government acts as a referee and an infrastructure builder, not a micromanager of the market.
Finally, Section 5, Modern Wealth Applications. Let's talk about using these codes today.
Let's bring all these 200-year-old theories in for a landing and apply them right now. Let's start with your career. Smith's labor and demand theories perfectly explain modern job markets. If you want a higher salary, you need to go where demand heavily outstrips supply, and where the division of labor is deepening. Look at the electric vehicle industry or artificial intelligence. These fields are expanding so rapidly and breaking into hundreds of highly specialized roles. You've got algorithm engineers, data annotators, battery specialists. Because the market desperately needs these specific skills, the wages are naturally higher than in traditional, shrinking industries where pretty much anyone can do the job.
Next up is the investing code. Remember the difference between nominal and real wealth from earlier? Well, if you just stuff cash under your mattress, inflation is going to eat it alive. Real investing, according to Smith's principles, means turning that money into value-generating capital. That could mean investing in stocks of companies that actually produce real goods and services, or, honestly, better yet, upgrading your own personal skills.
Spending $1,000 on a new professional certification that boosts your monthly salary is literally the purest form of investing in your own human capital.
And then, of course, there's the consumer code. Once you know that every single price is made up of wages, profit, and rent, you instantly become a much smarter shopper. Why does a cup of milk tea in a prime downtown city center cost 15 yuan, while the exact same drink in a small rural town costs half that? You aren't paying for better tea, right? You are paying the landlord's exorbitant downtown rents. Understanding this helps you see right through the illusion of price, recognizing exactly what you're really paying for.
So, let me leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Take a look at your own life and your own financial habits. Are you falling for that 200-year-old mercantilist trap, simply hoarding nominal cash and just hoping for the best? Or are you applying Adam Smith's true definition of wealth, upgrading your skills, specializing your labor, and building real, exchangeable value in the marketplace? The rules of wealth were unlocked centuries ago. Now it's completely up to you to use them. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.